Chicago Null Vector, a zombie survival series imagined in Chicago and written by Calder. Chicago Null Vector is a work of fiction. All entities, events, and technologies are imagined for narrative purposes. The science is speculative, grounded in real virology and neuroscience principles, but does not represent real-world research or organizations. My following approach weaves all four elements together: science, grit, escalation, and misdirection, ensuring that no perspective stands alone. Series theme: spoken word poetic piece. City lights flicker, sirens fade into the rain, steel bones breathing smoke, every street remembers pain. They told us help was coming, they told us stay inside, but truth was sealed in concrete, and buried under lies. Signals in the silence, humming through the dark, something learned our heartbeat, something struck a spark. This is the end of control, the rise of the unknown, when the living are hunted, and the dead won't go. We were numbers in a system, lines they chose to bend, now we run through the fallout, where survival is the sin. White coats in the shadows, hands clean of the blood, calling chaos progress, calling failure good. We read the warning signs written on the wall. Every choice we make now feeds the rise or the fall. Voices on the radio, cutting in and out, truth gets lost in static, fear replaces doubt. This is the end of control, the rise of the unknown, when the living are hunted, and the dead won't go. We were numbers in a system, lines they chose to bend, now we run through the fallout, where survival is the sin. If we light the fire, will it show the way, or burn what's left of us before the break of day? They're watching every movement, learning as we flee. The monster in the mirror is what we're teaching it to be. This is the end of control, no mercy left to sell, every choice a trigger, every street a hell. We were never meant to win, just data to defend. In the ruins of the city, we become the trend. Hear the hum beneath your feet. Chicago never sleeps, it adapts. Prologue: Origin of the Null Vector. Chicago, Illinois never slept, it only shifted rhythms. Freight trains hummed like steel arteries along the south side, the river carried reflections of glass and sodium light, and beneath the city's polished skyline, another city existed, one of basements, service tunnels, research annexes, and secured doors that never appeared on public maps. The entity that owned those doors called itself HELIX Directive Group, HDG for short. Officially, it was a biomedical logistics contractor, a partner to universities, hospitals, and federal agencies. Unofficially, it was a culture, a belief system, a conviction that progress required audacity, secrecy, and the willingness to treat risk as a necessary fuel. HELIX did not chase profit alone. It chased control. Their flagship initiative was known internally as Project Null Vector, a research program designed to neutralize neurodegenerative decay. The goal was ambitious and marketable: reversing late-stage Alzheimer's disease, stabilizing traumatic brain injury, restoring motor control after spinal shock. The science was sound on paper. A synthetic viral vector, engineered from modified lentiviruses, carried a gene-editing payload paired with a self-regulating protein scaffold. Once inside neural tissue, the vector would repair synaptic pathways, halt apoptosis, and stimulate controlled regeneration. In early trials on animal models, it worked. What HELIX underestimated was complexity. The human brain is not only electrical and chemical, it is adaptive, defensive, and deeply territorial. When Null Vector entered human neural tissue, it did not merely repair, it learned. The vector began interpreting threats not as pathogens, but as anything disrupting homeostasis, pain, emotional distress, fear, hunger. It rewrote survival priorities at a cellular level, suppressing higher cognition in favor of raw preservation. The first human trial subject was a dockworker injured in a Lake Michigan freight accident. Consent was rushed, oversight diluted by layers of subcontracted review boards. Within 48 hours, the subject regained motor function. Within 72, he stopped sleeping. By day 4, brain imaging showed unprecedented neural density growth in the limbic system and brainstem, while the prefrontal cortex began to atrophy. By day 5, he became violent. Security footage later revealed the moment HELIX would attempt to erase. The subject did not attack out of rage or confusion, but out of efficiency. Movements were deliberate. Pain responses were absent. Even after sustaining massive trauma, the body continued operating, driven by a nervous system locked permanently into survival mode. When the subject died, the virus did not. Null Vector persisted post-mortem, maintaining neural signaling through metabolic rerouting. Muscles stiffened but obeyed electrical command. The heart was no longer required. The brainstem became a throne of reflex. Reanimation was not resurrection. It was occupation. HELIX initiated containment protocols too late. A lab technician, exposed through a microtear in protective gloves, dismissed the contact as negligible. 12 hours later, she collapsed on the Red Line platform beneath Roosevelt Road. CCTV captured the confusion, the screams, the first bite. Emergency responders followed protocol: close contact, airway management, compression. They became carriers within minutes. Chicago fell in fragments. Hospitals became amplifiers. Transit tunnels became arteries of spread. The city's density, its speed, its stubborn refusal to stop moving, turned it into the perfect incubator. HELIX Directive Group issued a public statement citing a chemical spill, then quietly evacuated its senior executives through underground corridors connecting to private air transport. They did not shut the project down. They renamed it Phase Expansion. HELIX analysts concluded that Null Vector represented not a failure, but an evolutionary leap. A controllable post-human state, soldiers immune to pain, workers that did not tire, populations that could be directed. All that was missing was command and refinement. Outside, Chicago burned. Inside HELIX facilities, data was preserved, samples frozen, failures reframed as stepping stones. The virus escaped city limits within 3 weeks, hitching rides along evacuation routes, cargo shipments, and humanitarian convoys. By the time federal authorities understood the scope, the narrative was already rewritten, not as a corporate crime, but as an unavoidable catastrophe. Those who survived did not know the truth. They called them zombies. HELIX called them assets. And the Null Vector was only the beginning. Series structure: dual perspectives. Each chapter alternates viewpoint, creating a widening contrast between control and collapse. Odd-numbered chapters: HELIX perspective. These chapters follow executives, scientists, security directors, and internal operatives within HELIX Directive Group. The tone is clinical, restrained, and quietly arrogant. Language leans toward reports, internal dialogue, and strategic conversations. HELIX characters believe they are managing an event, not surviving it. Even as the world fractures, their focus remains optimization, containment, leverage, and narrative control. Even-numbered chapters: survivor perspective. These chapters follow ordinary Chicagoans, transit workers, nurses, students, delivery drivers, teachers, parents, and first responders. The tone is visceral and immediate. Streets, weather, sounds, and moral choices matter. Survival is uncertain, alliances are fragile, and information is incomplete. Survivors never see the full picture, only consequences. Flagship characters. HELIX perspective anchor. Name: Dr. Marcus Cade. Role: Director of Applied Neurovector Research, HELIX Directive Group. Background: former DARPA consultant and academic prodigy recruited for his willingness to pursue results without moral hesitation. Cade does not see himself as evil. He believes restraint is the true danger. Core traits: hyper-rational, emotionally contained, quietly dismissive of public institutions, loyal to data over people. Arc: begins confident that null vector can be refined and controlled. Gradually accepts that collapse creates leverage. By mid-arc, he is no longer asking whether HELIX should stop, only how much chaos is optimal. Survivor perspective anchor. Name: Lena Morales. Role: CTA train operator, Red Line. Background: lifelong Chicago resident, practical, observant, accustomed to responsibility without recognition. She understands the city's rhythms better than most and notices when those rhythms break. Core traits: resilient, grounded, morally anchored, slow to trust authority. Arc: starts focused on protecting immediate lives. Over time becomes a reluctant leader, piecing together patterns others ignore. She never learns the full truth, but she learns enough to act. Darkness scale: HELIX moral trajectory. HELIX does not begin as openly monstrous. It begins as reasonable. Protocols are bent for efficiency. Language softens consequences. By the time overt cruelty appears, it is framed internally as necessity. Phase 1: ethical shortcuts justified by urgency. Phase 2: human cost reframed as statistical noise. Phase 3: collapse leveraged for experimentation, population control, and influence. HELIX never twirls a villain's mustache. It believes history will thank it. Structural promise: every HELIX chapter will advance strategic control and concealment. Every survivor chapter will expose the human cost of those decisions. Truth will never arrive cleanly. It will leak, distort, and arrive too late. Chapter 1: HELIX perspective. Containment is a narrative. Dr. Marcus Cade watches the footage without sound. The subject moves through the lab with purpose. Not panic. Not rage. Purpose. Every step is economical. Every motion eliminates resistance. When the body is finally neutralized, Cade pauses the feed and zooms in on the neural overlay. It's not malfunctioning, he says to the room. It's prioritizing survival without sentiment. That's purity. Legal counsel objects. Risk management raises exposure scenarios. Public affairs asks how quickly a story can be buried. Cade redirects the conversation. Data retention. Sample preservation. Optics later. When reports arrive of a collapse on the Red Line platform, the room goes quiet. Not with fear, but calculation. Cade authorizes delay of city notification under internal emergency authority. He signs off on executive evacuation routes and orders phase expansion reclassified. The problem is no longer the outbreak. The problem is who controls the story. Chapter 2: Survivor perspective. The red line never stops. Lena Morales knows something is wrong before the screaming starts. The woman on the platform falls hard, body moving after it should have stopped. When she lunges, teeth bared, Lena seals the doors. Policy be damned. The train surges forward as fists slam against glass. Lights flicker. The tunnel ahead is dark. Dispatch goes silent. Lena drives blind through smoke and sparks, passengers praying, crying, recording. At Roosevelt Road the platform is empty, except for blood and a single abandoned shoe. She stops at an emergency stairwell and orders everyone off. Above ground, Chicago sounds different. Sirens stretch and then vanish. Smoke curls where lights should be. The city has lost its rhythm. And that's never a good thing. Chapter 3: HELIX perspective. Acceptable loss parameters. Marcus Cade briefs the board remotely. Infection curves rise exactly as predicted. Federal confusion buys time. We can refine the vector, he says. But only with scale. A question is raised about civilian casualties. Cade answers calmly. History rewards those who endure backlash. A containment order is issued, not to save the city, but to shape spread patterns for observation. Certain neighborhoods are flagged as non-essential. The science advances. Chapter 4, Survivor Perspective. South Side Static. New survivor point of view, Jamal Reed, former high school science teacher. Jamal barricades his apartment as emergency alerts contradict each other. He watches neighbors help, then hurt, then vanish. From his window he sees drones overhead, unmarked, silent. He begins documenting patterns. Bites. Time to turn. Behavior shifts. Someone is studying this. Embedded misdirection and clues. HELIX data references appear as rumors, drones, sealed zones, inconsistent aid drops. Survivors misinterpret them as military or foreign intervention. HELIX chapters quietly reference outcomes survivors have not yet reached. Truth never arrives whole. Ongoing escalation plan. Additional survivor perspectives rotate in later arcs: a nurse in Cook County Hospital, a truck driver on I-90, a National Guard private. HELIX fragments internally, factions arguing control versus monetization. Chicago becomes a case study. The world becomes the experiment. Chicago Null Vector remains a work of fiction. All entities, events, and technologies are imagined for narrative purposes. Chapter 5, HELIX Perspective. Closed Loop. Dr. Marcus Cade signs off on HELIX's first active control protocol. Designation: Shepherd Net. The theory is elegant. Low-frequency acoustic beacons mounted on municipal infrastructure emit patterned signals tuned to the null vector's altered brainstem responsiveness. The infected should orient, cluster, and idle. A city can be herded. Field tests begin along the Riverwalk and Lower Wacker Drive. Initial telemetry looks promising. Movement slows. Clusters form. Then the variance spikes. The signal does not calm every host. In a measurable minority, it accelerates aggression. The vector adapts, interpreting the stimulus as a threat rather than a directive. What HELIX created is not a leash. It is a bell. Cade orders the data preserved and the public-facing equipment quietly abandoned. The failure is logged not as a setback, but as a calibration milestone. Outside, the clusters break containment. Chapter 6, Survivor Perspective. The sound that pulls. Lena Morales hears the hum before she understands it. It vibrates through street signs and the soles of her boots, a low mechanical thrum that seems to bend air itself. The infected down the block stop wandering. They turn. Lena believes she's found a warning system. She leads her group away from the sound, marking safe routes with spray paint, circling the hum zones like poison. Other survivors follow her markings. What she doesn't see are the drones overhead, adjusting angles, recording movement. By mapping danger, Lena maps behavior. HELIX notices. Chapter 7, HELIX Perspective. Behavioral gold. Cade reviews layered footage, acoustic maps overlaid with survivor graffiti symbols. They're teaching us, an analyst says. Lena's roots reveal something Shepherd Net failed to isolate: predictive human response to vector stimuli. Where people flee, the infected follow. Where survivors linger, spread slows. Cade authorizes passive observation only. No correction. No rescue. Let them optimize themselves, he says. Shepherd Net is officially shelved. And officially, it becomes bait. Chapter 8, Survivor Perspective. The broadcast. Jamal Reed finally gets a signal out. Using a jury-rigged transmitter, he broadcasts his findings: byte timelines, auditory reactions, clustering behavior. He believes information will save lives. The message spreads faster than he expects. So does HELIX's interest. Within hours, infection response patterns shift. Aid drops appear, always just late, always just enough to keep people moving. Jamal doesn't know his broadcast has become a dataset. Chapter 9, HELIX Perspective. Adaptive Control. Shepard Net failed because it assumed obedience. Cade proposes guided chaos. Instead of forcing the infected to comply, HELIX will steer survivors. Information throttling. Selective relief. Acoustic cues disguised as infrastructure noise. Feared as the rest. The board hesitates. Cade reminds them control does not require dominance, only influence. Chicago's spread stabilizes, not because the outbreak slows, but because it becomes predictable. HELIX has learned how to listen. Chapter 10, Survivor Perspective. The choice. Lena is offered a deal. A secure corridor out of the city, coordinates delivered anonymously, confirmed by a working beacon that quiets the streets just long enough. She knows it's wrong. She also knows her people are tired, bleeding, and losing hope. Lena takes the route. The corridor works. Behind them, the redirected flow slams into neighborhoods that didn't get the message. The surge follows the path of least resistance, exactly as HELIX predicted. Lena saves her group. HELIX refines its model. And Chicago learns that survival, even when chosen with good intentions, can still be used against the world.